You're welcome back. This is UPfront. My name is Raymond Darkwa. Now, this week, two key issues are brought to the fore. The age-old conversation about how to sustainably finance tertiary education in this country. First, it was the urgent call on government to pay allowances and feeding fees for colleges of education. And just when the dust was settling on that, after the ministry released some money, there was a threat to defer 6,000 students at KNUST. This was over the non-payment of fees. All of this put together has brought back into proper focus the important issue of how to fund training of our human resource at the highest level. So tonight, I've assembled decision makers, current and former policy makers, to deal with this matter in a very progressive manner. Just before we launch into that conversation, I've been going through the budget for that sector, that's the education sector. We planned in 2022 to spend some 17 billion. Of the 17 billion, the sector which is number one, taking the chunk of the money, is for management and administration. If you pull that aside, tertiary education actually is number two, taking the chunk of the money in education, which is some 5.6 billion. I'm sure you asked about the things we do at second cycle education. Second cycle, surprisingly, is taking 1.4 billion of our education budget. Then basic education is taking 3.8 billion. So in effect, we are having the chunk of our education budget to a sector going to the tertiary education. So why is that not enough? And why do we still have the difficulties we face in this particular sector? Going forward, how do we make sure that we are giving money to a sector that's training the prime of our human resource, all of the things they need to make sure we get to the level that we want to make it happen? Joining us via Zoom are two very distinguished personalities. One is heading a tertiary institution, the University of Health and Allied Sciences, Professor John Japon. You're welcome very much to Prof. I hope you are doing well.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm doing quite well.
Brilliant. We're joined in studio by a man who has taught for more than 3 decades. He is currently the ranking on the Education Committee in Parliament, Peter Nochukotoi. I've also have to introduce to you a former minister in deputy position in that Ministry of Education. In fact, at a point in time, he was directly in charge of tertiary education. The Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, you're also welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Certainly, we'll be joined by others with views on this matter too. But gentlemen, let me welcome you once again. Let me start with you, Prof. Currently, what is our financing structure like? Does the universities get every single amount of money? And I mean tertiary education. Is it fully funded by government, or there's a cost-sharing program in place, as was discussed some time ago?
Well, Raymond, thank you once again, and good evening to my colleague panelists. Tertiary education financing has undergone a lot of changes over the years. From the time that I was in the university, where we used to receive allowances for feeding and all that, has changed. And the whole issue of cost sharing started in the days of Professor Diamond and his cohort of university administrators. So cost sharing has been something that has been going on for some time now. But the proportion of costs that goes to government and to the student or the parents, for that matter, has been changing over the years. I guess I must say that probably government has been requesting the student or the parent, for that matter, to bear a little more responsibility over the years. So cost sharing has been going on for some time.
I do recall that some years ago, the formula was pretty simple. The state government was taking 70%. Then the university and the students actually share the 30%. This was opposed, but it became policy. You run schools now. What are we sharing now? Is government still taking 70% or more than that or less than that currently?
I need to get to the drawing board to check the figures to be able to give you the specific figures. I don't want to hazard any guess, but I can tell you for a fact that for the current situation, what government basically does is to pay the salaries of employees of the university.
Oh, I see.
By and large, that is what happens. So the bulk of the salaries are paid by government. Almost every other thing comes from fees that we collect from students to help finance the running of the university.
I'll ask you about whether this is sustainable, but I should go around and come back to this point. And then you to tell me from deep within your heart whether what we are doing currently is sustainable. But let me come to the former Deputy Minister. Honorable Okujoto Ablakwa, there was a conversation some time ago, a discussion among the leadership of students and those of you in power about who should take which percentage of the costs. We understand that as we speak today, and Prof is making the point that beyond the salaries, the rest is up to the university to take care of. Is that what was agreed previously? When you were in the ministry, did you burden the schools with such huge responsibility of taking perhaps the chunk of the payments?
Well, thank you very much. Good evening to the eminent panel. It's good to see Prof in his new look. The last time I saw him, he was all bearded.
I joined the gang.
All the beard disappeared too. But he's looking very young. Good to see you, Honorable Nochi Kotoe. Yeah, so as Prof has said, the whole trajectory has been one where since the first university was established in 1948, you had very few people coming up the pyramid. So government could really take good care of students and as it were, take a greater share of the responsibility, if not even entirely, the cost of funding university education. But as we liberalized what became known as massification, and we had more institutions and many more students, and unfortunately, we didn't have a commensurate, growth of the economy. So governments came under pressure. I recall that as a student activist, we even protested against cost sharing. We thought cost sharing was bad. We looked at the days of our fathers and grandparents and thought that, look, if they could enjoy one in a room, they had free meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and they also had bursaries in addition. Why are you asking us to cost share? Why have you not also increased the pie so that we can receive the same benefit? So we fought cost sharing, and guess what? Cost sharing became even cost shifting. It got worse, and the honest reality, Raymond, is that as we speak, it's clear that government has really shifted a lot of the burden on students, and through very creative schemes. So there's a percentage of admissions that goes to international students, and international students are charged realistic fees, including tuition fees, which is not absorbed by government, so that it can supplement what the universities will require. Then they also introduced the fee-paying component. So we are now having an increasing number of fee-paying students, and it's all revenue, generating mechanism. So we need to be honest at this point and say that, look, if we assess the trajectory and see how, governments are really struggling to take care of tertiary education financing, we need to come up with a more sustainable blueprint moving forward. Can we have a needs assessment where students who really come from the category of the needy or the vulnerable, we can then take better care of them, give them scholarships, give them the bursaries they need, the support mechanisms, so that we can then allow for those who can really afford to also make a contribution. I think that it is that blueprint, that paradigm which will have everybody agreed to. That is what has been lacking. The recent proposal, for example, by the finance minister, you will recall, Raymond, when he announced the cuts that they were making in government expenditure. He threw it in that they were considering weaning off the universities. I have gone on record to say that it will spell doom. It will be disastrous. I do not think that the way our universities are structured now and how they are managed and the number of students that we have asked them to admit, particularly our public universities, that they can, be on their own. They can be weaned off. Though the finance minister said that they may offer some grants, I don't think that it's a sustainable path. I haven't seen any modeling. I haven't seen any feasibility study. I haven't seen any financial analysis that has been done. And I think that announcement is really premature. And I'm glad that Professor Japong has cautioned. I read elsewhere that he cautioned that government will have to slow down with that. Surprisingly, the unions appeared excited. I saw UTAC General Secretary Professor Jampo say that it's a welcome call, and I really got frightened because having worked at the Ministry of Education, having seen the numbers and having seen how if you withdraw the support that government gives the universities, how really, because look, even with the current arrangement, we have had to step in with a number of loans that the universities have gone for good purpose, good reason, either to build hostels or to construct roads. And they have not been able to pay because you see, there is also pressure on them not to charge what you may call realistic fees, competitive fees. The government is always, and Parliament as well, is always, asking the universities to be mindful of our economic conditions, the plight of, students generally. Most of them are from vulnerable backgrounds. So be careful about the fees you charge. So because of that, when they have gone for loans for all kinds of projects, we have had to step in. We stepped in the case of University of Ghana with hostels, road construction. I recall under Professor Ayike, we had to offer in some support. So it's clear that we need to really think through university financing, particularly public university financing. Even the private institutions are struggling. I do not think that we should just leave the private institutions on their own. They are carrying out a very important service, and we should find a way of also supporting them. But it is that blueprint. We need a certain understanding now. Having been a student leader, now having served in government and being in Parliament, I think that I have gone through all the various. When we were students, we don't want to hear anything about cost sharing. It became cost shifting. We got very angry. But you get into a position where you begin to look at the numbers, you begin to, face reality, and you need to, be more nuanced with your position. But let me also add that government has also been quite creative in seeking external support. So a lot of the infrastructure you are seeing these days is not only GOG funding or GET fund. Government is reaching out to external bodies. I recall, for example, when I was at the Ministry of Education, we reached out to the World Bank Centers of Excellence initiative, and we were able to attract some very good funding. We just had to come up with a little counterpart funding, and Sectekbe was very supportive at the time, and we established these Centers of Excellence at the University of Ghana and the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. It is those Centers of Excellence that helped us to fight COVID, for example, what the West Africa Center for Cell Biology and Infectious Pathogens. Without them, imagine what will have happened. They did the genome sequencing and all of that. So I think that we should encourage more creativity on the part of government. We should also look at even the whole model of university management and encourage them to be bold in attracting research grants, in attracting support, even increasing their quota of international students. And I see our international fees, and it's still nowhere near what international students, even when we send our students out there to the UK, to US.
I get the point, and I'm sure, I should come back to you. Yes, and I think we have lost you briefly on that one, but I should come back to you on this one. Except there's a quiet part of this conversation. I'm looking at the numbers, and if you want to drill down properly to university education, so the part to do with Government of Ghana funding for 2022, this year, Government of Ghana is seeking to fund university education with 1.8 billion. The expectation is that IGF will contribute 2 billion, and more than that actually, which clearly indicates to me that if you compare what the universities are expected to raise internally and also what Government of Ghana is supposed to put on the table, it's clear here that the universities are supposed to pay more than what Government of Ghana is supposed to put on the table. Is that a proper reading of this, Honorable?
Yeah, thank you very much. University or tertiary education has gone through transformation over the years. We know very well that years ago, when we were there, we were one student in a room, at most 2 years, and we had that privilege. We did not pay anything called academic user fee or residential facility user fee. So we went at a time when we only had to probably provide our own meals, and everything else was free. Yeah, but times have changed, and with the increasing numbers, I think it became necessary that some costs should be shared. And as Honorable Kujoto Ablakwa said, yes, we were all not happy with it. We felt that at least at the tertiary level, things should be free. Because having gone through the basic up to secondary, in those days when we had the sixth form, yes, you see the challenges that we went through. So at the university, at least our parents had some relief that they will be able to take care of our younger ones at the secondary level. Yeah, so if you realize that times have changed, and now you realize that there are 3 or more major funding sources for tertiary education. The government, as we indicated, is paying salaries. Yeah, so for the payment of salaries is the responsibility of government. Every month, government will have to pay that. Then the students also pay a part. That is the cost sharing, depending on the university and the programs that you are doing or you are offering. So some pay as much as 2,500 or even 1,800. I saw the University of Education, I think continuing students were paying about 1,800 for academic user, facility user fees. But some pay more than 3,000. Then came in the fee paying, where depending on the program, you have to pay so and so amount of money. I recall my 2 boys went to Legon, the programs they offered them, they were not interested. So changing the program, we had to pay
full fees.
Full fees, yes, to enable them go through the programs that they wanted. Now, then you come to another major source, which is the GET Fund through the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission. Yeah, this money goes to support projects and infrastructure in the universities or tertiary institutions. Yeah, so these are the 3 major sources. Then also,
but at Parliament, as the supervisory committee in charge of this particular sector, have you dictated to government before how they should arrange the payment structure on cost sharing, which is what we are doing currently? So have we told government that do 70 students, 30 government, or 20 students, 80 government? Have we directed government on this path? Is there a policy direction on that matter?
I would say there isn't, because we have never sat down as a nation to determine how much we spend on a tertiary student in the country.
Really?
Yes. Because if somebody is doing medicine How much is government spending on that student annually?
Okay.
How much are you spending on humanities annually? We have not determined that. So I think the school authorities or the university authorities also just say, okay, we feel that if you are doing arts, this or humanities, this is what you should pay. If you are doing sciences, this is how much you should pay.
But is that not irregular?
Yeah, it's regular, but we have come to accept it. So if we really sit down and then we cost everything, yeah, government, you are taking 70%, yeah, or more. So this is the cost. Let students also take this percentage. Yeah, that will be fine. But many a time, I've been of the view that the cost sharing, at least students should even pay less than they are doing now. Government must be ready to absorb much. And if you do so, because there are other funding sources we can get. I don't know if we can go into those things now.
I'll come to that point, but let me briefly bring in Prof on this particular point. Now, we know that you get subventions from the school. Are these the subventions, if Prof Japan can join us? Yes. Are these subventions the amount of money you use to pay the salaries, or the subventions are very different from the salaries that are paid by government?
Evans, I think I need to correct a few issues that have been raised.
Okay, very much so. If you can.
Yes, quickly. One of them is the fact that we do not know how much it costs to run specific programs. That is very far from the truth. We've done this costing over and over again. The only challenge is that whenever we present these things to Parliament, because Parliament has to sanction it, they think it is too high. And for that reason, since the year 2016, when I became Vice Chancellor of UHAS, none of our submissions to Parliament has been passed. Actually, no, to correct, the last one that was passed in 2017. So if I present my fee schedule, which has been properly costed with the input of, and now the way we do our fee scheduling, we involve the student representatives and all key stakeholders based on a realistic costing. We go to Parliament and say, okay, to do medicine, you need to pay 10,000 cedis. Parliament says, no, sorry, we cannot, the people cannot afford. And therefore, the 3,000 that you were paying last year will make it 3,500. And since 2017, there has been not a single peso increase.
But why is that so? Forgive me. I mean,
we send it to Parliament and they don't pass it.
Is it that you're unable to justify it to them?
Well, I guess I'm not in Parliament, but the parliamentarians should be able to tell us why they don't pass it. I believe the bottom line is that they say, well, the students are poor and they cannot afford. But our argument is that somebody must pay for it. Somebody must pay for it. And now all other costs has been shifted onto us. Municipal services, water, electricity, everything has been shifted onto the university administration. So you are sitting there and you ask yourself, how do you manage this? And they will not allow you to increase your fees because they say, well, our students are poor, parents are not able to afford, and therefore will not allow you to increase. Meanwhile, you should run the university through some magical wand. How do you do that?
Give me a second, let me interrogate this. But how is this possible? I need to speak to the MP on it. Yes, Prof, you're making a point. Please finish that point for me.
Yeah, so I think what we need to agree is that if it costs 10,000 cedis to train a student in a particular field, let us agree that it costs 10,000 cedis. And let's see how we can raise the money to get the 10,000 cedis. Maybe we can say, well, because of financial difficulties, students should pay 2,000 cedis. The remaining 8,000 cedis should come from X, Y, Z sources. But you cannot just tell us that, yes, we agree it costs 10,000 cedis, but we can give you only 2,000. And then how do you run it? I think we need an effective and efficient tertiary education financing system, which would be effective, first of all, in helping students to access financing. And this happens all over the world. Look, they know, I have friends who happen to have trained in other jurisdictions, in the US and other places. You go to medical school, you pay $40,000, $50,000 a year minimum. But the system knows that if I give a loan of $50,000 to a medical student, when the person graduates, he will be able to pay the loan back. So these are loans that are very soft, not 25% interest rates which our banks are giving. You know, loans that are developmental in nature, so that they pay over a long period of time. People graduate, and over a period of 15, 20 years, they are paying their loans back. And the system knows that you will pay. You know, so we need to look at that instead of this knee-jerk system where the bank gives you 5,000 CDs and the 5,000 CDs is not enough, and the students are running around looking for monies to pay. We have systems where some donor institutions give grants to some of these students.
Okay.
Through Get Fund, through Scholarship Secretariat, through MTN Foundation, many other foundations. Some of them are even in arrears. But if the government of Ghana has written to say that I'm giving this person a scholarship and I'll pay the fees, at least you have some comfort that even if it takes 2 years, the money will come. You know, so we need a system that is flexible, very soft, to allow the students to be able to walk to any institution, financial institution, and acquire a facility to get into a tertiary education, because the system knows that when this person finishes school, he'll get a job and pay back, be it 10 years, 15 years, but the loans that we're asking for students to pay 2 years, 3 years after graduation will just not work.
It's let me come in studio, because the point I wanted to make is that, I mean, this defines the scope properly. How is it possible that the people who are managing the schools tell you that this is the amount of money we need, and this is how we can run the student program with, and yet those of you in parliament who are not managing these schools, by your own calculation, insist on pegging fees at a very different rate? Are you not compromising either the quality or the amount of money required to do it? Are we not cutting corners in our quest to ensure that the right thing is done?
Let me correct that impression that it's Parliament that refuses to grant their request. It is not Parliament, because we have what we call the Fees and Fees
Shadow.
Charges.
Yeah,
Fees and Charges
charges.
Act. Then when they have to apply to the Ministry of Education that this is what we want our fees to be for this academic year, then the Minister for Education or the Minister of Education will compile the list, forward to Ministry of Finance. And it is the Ministry of Finance that presents it to Parliament, that this is what we want you to approve for the institutions all over the country. So I am a member of that committee, subsidiary legislation.
Yeah.
It finally comes to us because it is an ILI we have to pass.
Yeah.
So it is not Parliament, it is at the ministries, Education and Finance. They do the final arrangement and bring to us. So as a committee...
But do you have access to the original proposals by the schools?
We don't have, because whatever comes...
You don't get to know what
like,
really
let's
is
say
being
the
proposed.
previous year,
Yeah.
the one we approved for probably 2015 or 2016 academic year, they will quote that one. Then they will propose so and so for this year or next year. So you realize there's a percentage increase. Like he's talking about 2017. That one, they said they will allow about 15% increments. Yeah. So we worked on that and increased the fees or approved it by 15%.
Okay.
Yeah, but what happens is that since 2017, we are yet to approve new fees for them. And that one is not the fault of Parliament. It's the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Education who should come. That, oh, this is what we want to be approved.
But have you asked them for it? Because it's important that we are up to speed with what we are supposed to be doing. Have you asked them for it?
It is not our responsibility because as a committee.
Honorable, your committee is supervisory.
Yes. No.
Your job is to check whether they are doing the right thing.
What comes to the Committee on Education is annual budget.
Yeah, I get you. I'm not.
So annual budget, we don't calculate fees over there.
Yes, but I get you. You're also the subsidiary legislation committee. My only difficulty is why we have allowed since 2017 this to be established. 2017 is almost 5 years down the line.
Yeah, because we should have done that in 2020. But I got information that because of the elections, they wanted to postpone it to 2021. It has not. But I now know that they are preparing one to be presented when we resume sitting in May.
Are we not? Does it not affect the quality of education we are giving the people?
It should, but as a committee, we cannot give any directives. It's the ministry who should give directives.
But the committee should be concerned about quality of education, shouldn't it?
No, you see, as Parliament,
yeah.
There are a number of things that we do which many people don't understand. Like we cannot get up and say, why are you not increasing your fees? Or why have you increased your fees? We have laid down procedures.
But to be fair, you have actually called the ministers. Yes. You have called the ministers to come and answer specific questions. Is it that you feel this is not a very important one?
It is important. It is important. But we as a committee, we cannot initiate that process. It's the Ministry of Education and Finance.
With respect.
And when you
are a ranking member on the committee.
Yes, but what
in your personal capacity, speaking for the people of your constituency, couldn't you have hauled in the respective minister to come and answer questions on why this has not happened? Why, for the period you are looking at, we have not approved any increment or whichever, even if you want to reduce it, in the fees for the schools? So that we are not training students with resources that are unavailable.
Yeah, our recommendation when we approved the fees the other time was that let's make it an automatic, probably 10% annual increment. So they don't need to come back to the committee.
Regardless of whether the 10% can be able to...
Yeah, at least, because if after 3 years before you review fees, let's give them a leeway so that they can do that. But it was not accepted by the minister. That they will not grant because they will just take advantage of it. The universities will take advantage of it. And then other agencies, because it's not only that of education that we consider as a committee, health, other ministries bring their documents together. It's a very bulky document, which you take about even 3-4 months to work on. Yeah, so we gave that opportunity, but we are told no, it will not be realistic because they wouldn't like fees to be charged anyhow. And you remember when the issue was brought up, that of health. As soon as the committee received the document, the Ministry of Health started charging the fees at Kolebu, and we had to stop them from doing so because the committee had not presented the report to the plenary. Yeah, so we as a committee, we work on the directives of the ministry and we ask questions. So why don't you do it annually this way? Because after 3 years for you to present this, prices would have changed. Conditions will have changed. But once it's a policy of the ministry and government, as Parliament, you are handicapped in many ways. Yeah.
Professor Japon, it's the answer you get from Parliament. Are you satisfied?
But I think these are some of the political.
If I can hear you, Prof. I mean, yes.
Can you hear me? I was saying that these are some of the political games that are played.
I'm sure.
Time to time.
Yes, I think I can hear you better now. Forgive me. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I was saying that these are some of the political games that are played from time to time. Yes, it is true that it is what the minister presents to Parliament that is discussed. So if we make proposals to the ministry and they are not presented at Parliament, then Parliament can say it doesn't come to us. But the truth of the matter is that I have been privileged to be around this tertiary education management table for some time now. If you recall, I was Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research at the University of Ghana for 5 years before I came here. And I've seen both governments and both kinds of ministers, and it is the same. No government wants to appear to be increasing fees or overburdening students.
Oh, so that's the issue.
Yeah,
that's really the issue. Okay, I get you.
That is the truth. So my good friend Sami, when he was deputy minister in charge of Tertiary. I mean, when the proposals come to him, he would look at it carefully and say, look, the students cannot afford and this and that. So he would not send the increased fees to Parliament for approval. And same is happening now. That is the issue. We have proposed that this should be automated,
Okay.
such that it is inflation plus 2% increase. This proposal came when Professor Aite was Vice Chancellor of Legon. And it was discussed, and like he said, they thought that the universities would abuse I mean, we all know what inflation is.
Yeah.
So if I'm buying services with the same amount of fees that were being charged 5 years ago, what do you expect? So we are really, really struggling. But I think we should look at how to fix the issue. Fixing the issue requires some very, very great innovations, because we are at a crossroads. And we must accept that we cannot continue to push the burden on the student, or the mother for that matter. And if we cannot do that, then what are the alternatives? Because you see, Sami talked about massification. That is one of the big challenges. Look, you go to some classes, sociology class, you see 1,000 students sitting in there. You ask yourself, how are you teaching 1,000 students effectively? For the programs that I run, unfortunately, I cannot seat 1,000 students in a medical school class.
That's true.
So I'm compelled to keep to the 75, 80 kind of figures. And for that reason, I cannot get enough revenue to run the university. So I also have to think through how to generate the income to run the university. So if in the past, as was agreed by a rule of thumb, 80% regular, 20% fee paying.
Okay.
But now I can't get increase in fees. So before you are aware, it is 50% regular, 50% fee paying, because the university has to run.
It's interesting.
We must really, really face the music.
We'll take a break.
And for some of us, the newer universities, the infrastructure is just not there.
There's Get Fund.
You see, look, you build University of Ghana.
There's Get Fund specifically for that. The struggles have been done before. The law has been passed.
I have projects. I have projects that have been under construction for the last 8 years. My central laboratory complex was signed in 2014. Sami was what do you call it? The
Deputy Minister.
Deputy Minister in charge of Tertiary. My School of Public Health was signed in 2013. As we speak now, they are still under construction. And now even the contractors have left site because they have not been paid.
But we are still paying for Get Fund, right? They are still deducting the amounts involved.
I don't look at those components. All I know is that my contractors have brought their interim payment certificates. They have been certified. We've sent them over, and they have not been paid.
But you have not asked why they have not been paid.
We must be careful again not to make it an MPP or NDC issue.
Very much so, and I understand you perfectly.
Because these certificates have been outstanding for a very long time.
I mean, I'm just confused about, it appears that we know what we have to do, but we do not want to do them. You run schools. Does it have any impact at all on the quality? Because I was concerned about that earlier. On the quality of the product you are bringing out here.
I think the consumer should be the person assessing whether there's been a change in quality or not. I haven't collected any empirical data to show that there's been a quality shift. But we keep hearing all these commentary about the fact that the quality of graduates that are being churned out now are not as good as they should be and all that. But probably we need to do proper tracer studies to be able to verify that. But I will not be surprised if there's been a little bit of drop in quality. I will not be very surprised. Because if you are teaching a class of 1,000 compared to when you're teaching a class of 200, how much time do you have to interact with the students to let them understand and getting tutorial work done properly? And for some of the courses, they've even stopped asking the students to write essays. Can you imagine teaching a class of 1,000 and asking them to write an exam with 5 essays?
It sounds interesting, yeah. I mean, how can you mark
a lot of shift is going into multiple choice questions.
Wow. Now, Prof, I'll come back to you. Let me get the former education minister to come in on this particular point. It appears the buck stops with the politician. And it appears that the politician has been playing hanky-panky, or if you like, has been acting like the proverbial ostrich with this matter. From where you sit, he gave some proposals on how to deal with this. A proper financing structure. If you don't want to pay for the child, let the child get a loan and pay for it themselves. Is this something we can look at anytime soon?
Well, Raymond, those are very insightful proposals. But at the risk of holding brief for the politician, let me state the 3 constraints within which the Ghanaian politician operates.
Okay.
One, the 1992 Constitution. Article 25(1)(c) is very clear.
Progressively free.
If I can quote, higher education shall be made equally accessible to all on the basis of capacity by every appropriate means, and in particular, by the progressive introduction of free education.
Okay.
So that is the aspiration. That is what is in our constitution. So that's the first constraint.
Okay.
The second constraint is that tertiary education in Ghana is still considered very elitist. If you look at the gross enrollment ratio,
okay,
we are nowhere near 20%. We are not meeting the UNESCO target. So that's the second constraint. The third constraint is the economy. You have all of these very brilliant, talented students coming up from basic, second cycle,
okay,
but they have real challenges about ability to afford. So that is why at the Ministry of Education, we quietly came up with a policy working then with the National Council for Tertiary Education that there is no way, looking at these 3 factors, the Constitution, looking at the elitism around gross enrollment ratio for tertiary education, and the state of the economy, that we will allow fees to be increased beyond 10% in any academic year. So these are genuine challenges that the politician has to grapple with. We all have to decide. We all have to decide as a country, that do we want to keep our constitutional aspirations and ambitions, where not only second cycle will be free, but we work towards the day that tertiary education will also be free, more accessible, and available. Then we must also address the issue of elitism. Why is it that our education is still a pyramid after all these decades, that so many people begin, only a few get to the top? And we know the implications of that for national development. Where we are, the state of our development, the kind of professionals. I mean, take, for example, doctors. WHO says we should be doing 1:1,000, 1 doctor to at least 1,000 patients. Ghana is doing 1 to more than 6,000. When are we going to address this? At this rate. So despite the fact that you have a class of 1,000 students and all this massification going on and all of that, we still are lacking behind. and we must play catch up. So I think that we need to find a very balanced situation where we begin to identify those who can help, who can pay. I do not support opening up too much to the detriment of brilliant, talented, and then say you do a ratio where only 20%. I think that there has to be greater commitment. If you take Get Fund, for example, the Get Fund law, which we student activists fought for, and it became law in 2000, it stated there clearly that tertiary education, in terms of proportion, it should have the lion's share. That's not what has been going on. So in terms of the financing, I think that there's been too much lip service, a lot of promises, a lot of pledges that are not delivered. Sometimes, and these successive governments, they will say that they have not been partisan at all. They'll say, okay, on this matter, we will absorb, we will take care of it. But the money doesn't go. So I think it's for us to also have a government, a president who prioritizes. If we agree that, look, tertiary education has become a challenge, quality is a challenge, we are not meeting our gross enrollment targets, we must work towards a day that it will be free for our people. Then let us put our money there. We are finding money in this country for too many, unnecessary things that I don't want to go into. Things that really, do not edify and are not priorities. If we agree that we need tertiary education to, as it were, expedite the rate of development and to transform our society, then let's put our money there.
I'll take a break. After this break, we'll conclude this conversation. You welcome back to UPfront. My name is Raymond Akwa. So just going off to the particular break, we had a former Deputy Education Minister put this in perspective and basically charge us with a single word that we should keep to our words when we say we want to fund education. But is it that simple? Can we get a straightforward commitment from Parliament that, for example, the 6,000 in KNUST, they will not be asked to defer? Yeah. Would you intervene?
If you maybe check the media, we as members of the committee, we are calling on the university authorities to revisit their decision.
So where would they get the money from?
No, what we want government to do, or the ministry, let me talk of the university itself first, is that they should look at a long-term effect. You ask them to go home now, they're going to defer their courses, fine. But this 6,000 plus, when they're coming back next academic year, will KNUST have the facilities to absorb them? Then again, admitting fresh students.
Who pays the money? That's the most important question.
No, what I was saying is that they should give them more time. For instance, the academic year or the semester is about to end. So just manage as you have done so far. Where some have used the money wrongly. Money is given to them by their parents to pay the fees. They must have misapplied or misused the money. That one is not the best. But give them up to the end of the semester. Let them write the end of semester exams. As they are coming back to register for next semester, you make sure that they pay the arrears and whatever fees they will have to pay again. Normally, I know...
How do you know the schools don't need the money to run in this semester?
I may not know, but as an institution, they should be able to find means of running the institution.
What do you want the Education Ministry to do immediately?
Yeah, the Ministry of Education should intervene and know how much is the sum. How colossal is it? How many millions or hundreds of thousands is it? So that they can intervene. You say, what has happened? No, let me come in. What is happening is that many of these students depend on loan sources. We have the Student Trust Fund, yes.
SLTF.
And for 2 to 3 years now, they have not been giving money to release to students. And it is unfortunate. Some of them generally depend on that money. Then we have the Scholarship Secretariat, which is under the Office of the President. They also interview students. I had the list of almost almost 10,000 or more applicants granted scholarship or support, but they are yet to receive the money. Then UPfront also has its own funding sources for students in tertiary institutions. But this is the situation. Since July last year, UPfront has not received any money. So how are they going to help students? So the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Finance, and the Presidency should come in. As a matter of fact, they release monies to these 3 agencies so that students who are in real need of the money can go there for funding, loans and funding, and then they can help pay their fees. That is the major way that government can intervene now.
I guess I can't, if Prof. Japan is still, I'll take final words from you on how moving forward, because you made this so many wonderful proposals on the table. Are these proposals already submitted to government?
Raymond, if I may just comment briefly on the suggestions by the ranking member on the Education Subcommittee.
Yes, please.
I think that this issue from Kia University, in my opinion, the way it has been presented, has given Kia University administrators some bad publicity, as if they are not concerned, they are insensitive and all that. We all have the same challenges. Maybe because Kia University is a very big institution with close to 120,000 students, the defaulters may hit the number 6,000. But for us, with about 5,000 students, our defaulters may not be that much. But we also have defaulters. But I think it needs to be put on record that we facilitate every student who genuinely has a challenge. Normally, the trends suggest that normally about 70% of the students are able to pay their fees. There are some 30% who would have some problems. And we have a mechanism here at UHAS. If you have any such challenge, you are requested to write to the office of the registrar to state exactly what your challenge is. And the university will come up with some soft terms. So even though the arrangement is that you must pay 70% of your fees at KUSC before you can register, once you write and officially seek that request with your guarantor, that is your parent or whoever, some soft terms are given to you.
Thank you, Prof. Forgive me, my time is up. And Honorable, thank you so much for joining us too. Folks, that's where we end today's edition of UPfront.